Welcome back again to the channel, everybody, and it's my number 3 team in my 2024 NFL Deep Dive Series, the defending Super Bowl champions, back-to-back champions, the Kansas City Chiefs. Like, comment, subscribe, do all that YouTube stuff, please and thank you. It does amazing things for the progress of this channel, and it's another part of this series that I just love is talking about great teams, and you're going to see a lot of the word best and a lot of purple in this video, more than you've seen probably in any other video, just because what a team they've developed. They've done a great job of putting together a great coaching staff. It starts with Andy Reid, who is arguably one of the best ever, and we'll get to that. He's done a great job of putting together assistant coaches and coordinators and keeping and building, putting the right people in the right places, both coaching staff and player roster wise. Matt Nagy looking for career renaissance as the offensive coordinator after kind of struggling last year in replacement of Eric Bieniemy. Steve Spagnuolo, what an amazing assistant coach he's become. We'll get to why he's so important to this team and to the long-term success of this team. You know, they were able to maintain a lot of great players. You know, you talk about Chris Jones, who they were able to extend last year. They got great breakout stars in Trent McDuffie, Chamari Connor. They were able to bring back guys like Nick Bolton, George Karlaftis, who did take a little bit of a step up. You hope that he continues to be on the rise there. On the offensive side, Isaiah Pacheco took another great step up as a running back. You know, Rashee Rice had a really good rookie year despite his abilities behind the wheel of a car. Marquise Brown did get hurt in preseason. He was a big free agency pickup for them. Probably the most significant free agency signing that they had. They didn't really do a whole lot in free agency that was truly significant. Drafted Xavier Worthy to be basically the next Tyreek Hill maybe in this offense. They drafted Kingsley Suamataia, who's going to be a starting left tackle come week 1. You're hoping that Jawan Taylor can become who they thought he was going to be. But one thing that they did was they did a great job of maintaining the roster that won 2 Super Bowls now. You know, they lost L'Jarius Sneed. They lost Willie Gay on the defensive side of the ball. Those are significant losses. They had, Sneed more than Gay, but Sneed had a really tremendous carved out role, and they just didn't want to pay him because they felt they had the bodies to replace him. That's yet to be seen, though it's still a great cornerback group and a great defensive back group overall. Willie Gay a lot easier to replace with the bodies that they have, Tranquil, Chanel, and Bolton. But what makes this team truly great is what they're doing in preparation, week to week, game to game, season to season, and it starts with the coaching staff. So this is my tied for 4th coaching staff in the league, and we'll start with Andy Reid, who is ranked as my number 1 head coach in football. Very hard to argue that, I would think. He, in this time in Kansas City, since the way he was able to mold Patrick Mahomes the way that he has and to overcome the choking sort of reputation he had in Philadelphia, has put him in a position where he's legitimately in the argument for best coach ever. If they go 3 in a row, I would put him in, legitimately solidify him in that argument with Belichick, really, because I think Belichick sort of still stands alone. But Andy Reid's coaching tree is better than Belichick's in terms of the overall success that his assistant coaches have had when moving on from him. We just covered John Harbaugh, who might be the best of them all. But he's still able to put together a great staff that works in congruity with him. You saw what happened to Eric Bieniemy. Eric Bieniemy was seen as this great offensive mind under Andy Reid. Why isn't he getting a head coaching job? Well, he left Andy Reid, went to Washington, and boy, did that offense suck. Because it's almost like Andy Reid really does a great job controlling things if he puts the right people around him in certain scenarios too. So you look at, for example, Matt Nagy, who's my 23rd ranked offensive coordinator, who left to be the head coach of Chicago, never really had all that much success, and then comes back to Andy Reid. They struggled early on in the year, but they were still able to win the Super Bowl after they settled in. But he understands Andy Reid's system. He understands the way Andy Reid wants to coach. Matt Nagy, to me, could easily become like the next Josh McDaniels in that sense, where Josh McDaniels just understood what Bill Belichick wanted. He just couldn't stand alone as a head coach. Matt Nagy, probably the same thing. It'll be interesting to see now that he's settled back into this role, now that the personnel has sort of been settled for a second straight year here, that he's going to be able to maybe take it up a level. He doesn't, looking at some of the positional coaches and assistant coaches he's going to have, Joe Blymeyer is your pass game coordinator. You got Porter Ellett, Connor Embry. You got David Girardi, Andy Hecht, Corey Mathai, Tom Melvin. There's not a lot of guys here that truly stand out. Todd Pinkston's your running back coach. He's a former receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles under Andy Reid. There's not a lot of positional coaches that truly stand out here for this offense. I think that speaks a lot, again, to Andy Reid's ability to really raise up all these coaches around him, not just the players, but raise the coaches up, empower these coaches, especially on the offensive side of the ball, and get them as like this well-oiled machine where they're able to they're in coordination with him, they're in coordination with the players, and it just works out so well. Then you move over to the defensive side, and as a Giants fan, how I love this man, Steve Spagnuolo, who's my number 2 defensive coordinator, only behind Jim Schwartz, because I just think what Jim Schwartz did with Cleveland was just a masterclass. Not to take anything away from Spagnuolo, but he had a tremendous offense complementing him. He has Patrick Mahomes there as well to help him out. But man, Spagnuolo put together such an amazing scheme against the Baltimore Ravens in particular. We talked a lot about that in the previous video, the number 4 team, the Baltimore Ravens. And he settled in. We talked about with Jim Schwartz. It's same thing with him. He is somebody who, frankly, at his age, this stage, teams aren't going to be looking to hire him to be a head coach. So he's going to be a part of this team for as long as he wants. It's going to allow them to create a nice little streamline of players and personnel and coaches and scheme to really put together the best roster possible every single year, where you're not changing anything up. You're just getting the best players that fit, and then like a glove, like a rotational thing. That's going to open up things, I think, where you're going to see guys not getting paid in certain scenarios. We saw that just with L'Jarius Sneed, who they got rid of because they weren't going to pay him. And I think that's because they understand the continuity of the defensive scheme, and the defensive side of the ball in particular allows them to make these guys a little bit more replaceable. As long as you got a couple of guys out there that have some consistency at each position group, at each level, I think you're going to see a lot of turnover just because Spagnuolo's going to be just plugging and playing a lot of guys. The other positional coaches for him, again, nobody really stands out all that much to me. There isn't really a whole lot of a threat here where you're going to see guys getting hired away. So this is a coaching staff which their floor is extremely high long term just by the way they've designed it. And I really like that Spagnuolo is going to be able to bring a really attacking style to complement Andy Reid's offensive style, which is also very attacking. This is a high-flying team on both sides of the ball with this perfect combination of schemes. I think that's why this combination has been able to work so well between Andy Reid and Steve Spagnuolo. Why you've seen such tremendous results from them. They are the perfect 1-2 punch. And Andy Reid respects Spagnuolo enough to sort of be very much hands-off, it seems, on the defensive side of the ball. But Spagnuolo, I think, isn't doing anything that Andy Reid, if he was super hands-on, I don't think he's doing anything Andy Reid wouldn't want him to do. And I think that's also what helped this team be so great last year, particularly on the defensive side of the ball, which in a lot of ways saved them early in the year in particular, and put them in great positions in the playoffs, made them as much of a threat as they've ever been, despite not having an offense that was as high flying as people were used to. And all that offense needs to do is get back on track, and then you have like a true juggernaut level team on both sides of the ball, which is so rare to come across these days. It does help they have the best quarterback in the league in Patrick Mahomes. He gets a 96 grade for me. Backup Carson Wentz. Whatever. 1 year wonder. Patrick Mahomes has been elite since he became a starter. It's undeniable. And he, I think, overcame the concerns that people had for him when he lost Tyreek Hill. And he completely changed up how he navigates a drive, how he navigates a field, how he navigates his progressions. He completely changed it, became somewhat of a different player when Tyreek Hill left, but still was able to maintain such a high level of play. And that's a rare thing that you see in the NFL. It's rare that you see a quarterback in particular, especially one this early in his career, lose such a unique player on his offense that was such an important and heavy feature in the offense, and still thrive the way that he did and win. Like Super Bowl win, not just win in the regular season, win. I don't know when the switch flipped, but I think sitting that rookie year with Andy Reid and Alex Smith did wonders for him. I think it cleaned up a lot of the rawness that he had coming out of college. And he just hit the ground running so incredibly well. And I think being in the same system has helped him. And I also think being granted the freedom to be like this Steph Curry type player in the NFL, I think it helped his enthusiasm, surely. And I think also kept him motivated, allowed him the openness to the creativity they have with him, even in the most silly of things, like how they come out of the huddle, how everyone turns in a circle right before the ball is snapped, where it's just silly schoolyard stuff a lot of the time, but it works when you got professional talent, the ones doing it, and a defense is sort of just sitting there like, what are they doing? And then before you know it, it's a touchdown. Because you've spent all that time standing there wondering what these goofs are doing. And there it is, right? I think they've done a great job of keeping a certain, despite losing Tyreek Hill, they kept a certain core around him. Certain types of players in particular, making sure that he had like a healthy rotation of guys. I think they also realized that they needed to get faster. I think from last year, they weren't nearly as fast as maybe they're used to being, and that helps Mahomes' game when they do play fast, because Mahomes has a monster arm. So you can do a lot of things post-snap while still having a lot of speed on the field, because Mahomes can throw the ball as far as you need him to throw it. I think adding Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy in particular, that's going to create more high flying from this offense that I think Mahomes really likes and embraces. And I think that's also going to help him continue to expand the game week to week, where they become less predictable. I think there was a time, where Mahomes, maybe didn't have the best game because of how predictable they were. And then there'd be some weeks they'd be predictable, but he's so good that he was able to overcome it anyway. But then there was a couple weeks where that wasn't really the case. I think that's because teams just knew that they weren't super fast anymore. And the guys that were fast were like MVS, and they knew he wasn't going to catch the ball anyway. So they weren't necessarily all that scared about it. So they put a lot more focus on like Travis Kelce and on Isaiah Pacheco and guys like that in order to counteract that. And I think that when you give Mahomes the speed that they've now given him, that you're sort of moving back to what they were when they had Tyreek Hill there. But I also think Mahomes, because he was forced to refine his game, is now obviously a more refined quarterback. So it doesn't make them more predictable the other way. It, I think, expands them and somehow makes them way less predictable, even though I think they're going to go a lot more back to what they were doing with Tyreek Hill than what they were doing last year. And I think that if you got a couple bucks to put Mahomes on for MVP, I think it's easy money. It could be easy money. It's just the adaptability and playing through injuries. Can't miss that. Rolling your ankle, playing through an injury against a great defense and winning a game. There's really nothing that can stop this guy. And as much as I hate his wife and I despise his brother as much as anything, like, if they never showed them ever, that would be great. If they just disappeared off the internet, that would be great too. But, and to play with those distractions in the periphery, to just dismiss them, you never hear him like say anything about it, where I think that would take down a lot of other players, to be honest. So I think his mental toughness is great, his physical toughness is great. That's why he's really just the best quarterback. I couldn't think of anyone that I could put ahead of him. They are tied for 6th with their rush threats. Mahomes doesn't really have, sort of entering that Aaron Rodgers stage of his career where I wouldn't rank him as much of a run threat. So like what we saw with Aaron Rodgers progress to. But when you got Isaiah Pacheco, late round pick, complements the offense so well. Slid right into that role. They adjusted their offense in a way where it opened up opportunities for him, and he's become a great back. A great all-purpose back. Basically ran Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who's now like their 3rd string running back, out of town. You know, shout out to Carson Steele, sort of the preseason hero meme of this past offseason, made this team. He could probably end up being the 3rd string back as he continues to improve throughout the year. He'll get a lot of special teams opportunities. They brought in Samaje Perine, who was dropped by Denver. So they signed him. He's going to come in. He's basically going to be the backup here. He's going to be that early down back to spell Isaiah Pacheco in these situations. But one thing Pacheco brings, he's a really complete back. He's also the 6th best receiving back in the league for me. There isn't really anybody else on the team that fits into this role nearly as effectively. They're all like low-end replacement level. You know, when Samaje Perine's your 2nd best receiving back, it's not really great depth in that sense. So I would say Isaiah Pacheco really spends most of the game on the field. I think that's really what you want anyway. He's being the 6th best receiving back, 6th best, 1st and 2nd down traditional running back for me. That puts him into like rare space with like Christian McCaffrey and guys like that, and being like a top 3 running back in the league for me. I tried to get him in some of those fantasy leagues. I said I wouldn't play fantasy, and then I was like, I'll just make a couple teams just to see what it's like. Couldn't get him on any of my teams, damn it. He was somebody I really wanted. Anyway, but he is, and I don't think he's somebody who's reached his peak yet. I think as he gets more experience and more chemistry with not only Mahomes, but with the coaching staff and with Matt Nagy as the offensive coordinator, the sky's really the limit for this guy. And I think now that he's got a really great compliment for the early down work in Samaje Perine. Samaje Perine's like one of the perfect early down backups because it's the strength of his game. It's not like a Justice Hill where he's going to be somebody who's going to fill in a lot in the receiving back role. So it sort of takes away from his ability as a run threat. As a true run threat, early down guy. Samaje Perine's going to come in there and he's going to wear out these teams. He's going to come in, late in drives and just punish people. He's going to come out late in games and just punish people. And then Pacheco's going to be there. He's going to be this shifty, fast, disappearing behind offensive linemen, popping out on the other side of the field and the defense not knowing where he is because they're so exhausted from being beat up by like Perine and having to run around chasing Xavier Worthy around. And Pacheco has the ability where even if it wasn't like that, he'd still be a really effective back, and he's coming in. This is the perfect situation. This is like, there's certain guys who are just built to perform in certain offenses. I look at Christian McCaffrey with the Shanahan offense. You look at, Lamar Jackson with that Baltimore offense. You look at Jalen Hurts with that, Steichen, Sirianni style of offense. Then you got Pacheco, who just fits here. He just fits like a glove here. And it's just, I don't think he could have gone to any other team and seen this much success, seen this much improvement. Because that's the other thing that you've seen from him too is, you look at the early snaps he took in his career, yeah, he was really dynamic. He's got that fastness. There's all the memes of him. There's all the memes of people literally running through doorways at full speed. And they're like, oh, running like Isaiah Pacheco through the house. So he had that like bulldog mentality to him, like playing like a 250-pound back despite being like, 190? It would be amazing to know how much Isaiah Pacheco weighs. I can't imagine it that much. But the way that he improved, his football IQ improved throughout that rookie season in particular, it was really amazing to see. And that's a huge compliment to not only his ability, but the patience of the coaching staff to actually work with him to identify his weaknesses, for him to be open to the criticism and open to the improvement as well. And that's why I also see him projecting to be so much higher, even higher than I have him now by the end of this season. I think just the world of this guy. I think him and Mahomes could be a 1-2 punch for a long time, as long as Pacheco doesn't ask for an arm and a leg when he becomes a free agent. Now, something that's always been a weakness for this team since Tyreek Hill left is that they're tied for 25th in terms of their wide receiver room. Rashee Rice, question marks about him, with the whole car accident stuff. Marquise Brown is going to miss, I think, at least the first week. It could be up to the first 4 weeks of this season. Xavier Worthy, I think, is going to slide into his role earlier than maybe they wanted to, but the speed, him and Marquise Brown, I think, are there to basically try to recreate Tyreek Hill, like I said earlier. They brought back Juju Smith-Schuster, who I think is just similarity stuff here. You bring him in there, he understands the offense. He'll probably just be like a backup slot guy. Him and Sky Moore will compete for snaps. Mecole Hardman is, again, I think he's like the high floor guy where you just need somebody that Mahomes trusts out there, who understands the scheme, understands the situation, what the offense is trying to accomplish, when maybe someone newer to the offense like a Brown or a Worthy or Sky Moore, who just can't seem to get his head on straight. That would be an opportunity for Mecole Hardman there. Justin Watson, he's sort of, I guess, going to be the backup to Rashee Rice. I think that's going to be what his role is. And that's the thing about Rashee Rice. He really has a carved out role here because it's really just him and Justin Watson who play that role. I think between Marquise Brown, Xavier Worthy, Sky Moore, Juju, Mecole Hardman, they're all playing like the same role within an offense. So that Marquise Brown being hurt doesn't really affect them as much as it would, I'd say, if Rashee Rice all of a sudden wasn't able to play because the league suspended him or something. I think there'd be a huge drop-off there. But you hope Xavier Worthy can develop and you can use him like they used Tyreek Hill and open up a lot of opportunities. They're going to expand that offense out. They basically brought him in as a first-round pick, understanding that he would probably be a backup to Marquise Brown for most of his rookie season. But I think they also anticipated Marquise Brown having a huge year where they wouldn't be able to afford him after their 1-year deal with him has expired. This injury might help that. Maybe he'll just finally enjoy winning for the first time. That could help as well, especially leaving Arizona in particular. That must have been a nightmare for him. But the number one receiver on this team is, and always will be as long as he decides to play, Travis Kelce, who's the number one tight end in the league for me. As much as it annoys me, his dating life, between him and Mahomes, they have really annoying personal lives. But as they're such great players, and their personal lives somehow, despite being so annoying, doesn't affect how they play on the field at all. They only get better. They only start working better together. It is just fascinating. And as much as sometimes I'm cheering against them just because I am annoyed by the people they decide to associate with outside of the football field, on the football field, Jesus, man. How do you get better than these two? Maybe Brady and Gronk? But I think longevity, it's got to be Mahomes and Kelsey, right? They won 3 Super Bowls. I don't think Brady and Gronk did they? They might have. They might have won 3 together. The third one was in Tampa. They did win 3. But I mean, come on. Gronk, great player. Brady, the best ever. This is as close as you're ever going to get to ever potentially exceeding it. And they're real close. Kelsey and Mahomes also work so well together because Kelsey has that creative mindset that Mahomes has as well. You'll see him be able to do things that are so out of the norm, that are so out of what the play call demands, that makes no sense with the route combinations, but they don't even have to speak to each other. Mahomes knows what Kelsey's thinking. Kelsey knows what Mahomes are thinking because they're thinking the same way. They have the same mindset. And that's, I think, what makes this a real perfect marriage here. You do worry about how long Kelsey's going to want to play for. You know, his brother did just retire after contemplating it for really 2 years. You've heard Travis Kelsey, rumblings from him, from his camp, as they say. And I don't know if maybe they don't win again. He doesn't call it quits. You know, there could be the motivation where, like, let's run it back again. I wonder how many times he's going to want to run it back. He does take quite a beating out there. You know, as a tight end and as a guy who gets a lot of volume, he's taken a lot of hits. And it's a lot of hits in the open field, you know, and a lot of guys running at him full speed, more so than just being in like an inline blocker, where he's mostly working off of double teams and everything like that with the tackle. That might be a little bit less wear and tear on his body. He's got wide receiver level volume, doing it, getting smoked by linebackers every play. That takes a toll. When does the drop-off happen? Does it ever happen? Probably not. I think he is going to go at the top end of his career. Now they've got Jared Wiley, a rookie. They acquired Peyton Hendershot from the Cowboys. They kept Noah Gray. So they have a nice group here that does take the pressure off of Kelsey long-term throughout the season. Not that it should be much of a concern, but it would be nice for the longevity of him playing a lot longer than if you just put him at ease a little bit and, you know, allowing his mind, you know, keep allowing him to play creative football out there, open up all these opportunities for Mahomes, and just continue to annoy defenses with their gameplay and annoy me with their dating choices. Now let's go to the offensive line. They're pass blocking. They're third in the league here for pass blocking. Let's start with the real stars of this offensive line, the interior. Drafted extremely well with Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith. Amazing job. Then there's the free agency signing of Joe Thuney. Amazing. This is the best, probably the best interior offensive line overall in the entire league. They all complement each other really well. Great chemistry with each other. Creed Humphrey is just a star. Now the tackles are where the question marks have sort of always been for Mahomes since he came into the league. They did a great job establishing the interior. They've sort of been looking for that star tackle, though, this whole time. They brought in Jawan Taylor from Jacksonville last year, expecting him to play left tackle, ended up being right tackle, where he played in Jacksonville. Didn't really take that next step. They were hoping that they got him on his rise. Not to say that he was bad, but I think they were expecting him to be more of like a top 10 tackle in the league after getting him at sort of his peak leaving Jacksonville than they didn't really get that. Maybe a second year here, maybe, you know, it works out that way. They also got rookie Kingsley Suamatia from BYU, all name Hall of Fame right here. Really like him as a pass blocker coming into the league. I think he was a solid draft pick for them. He's going to find his way into the starting lineup here early in his career. Getting thrown into the fire a little bit, but he's got great compliments all around him. And he's got great coaching with Andy Reid. He's got great quarterback play. He's going to be able to be directed as long as he's teachable throughout from day to day, game to game, drive to drive. I could see him really excelling. I think he's got all the traits to be a really great tackle in the league. Their depth is extremely questionable. They kept 3 rookies. Wanya Morris is your swing tackle. This is the cause for concern here. You keep a healthy offensive line, you're golden. If even one of your starting offensive linemen go down, it starts to take a huge tumble here. They've lost a lot of their depth in free agency just because, they've dedicated a lot of their money to other things. And, them keeping 3 rookie offensive linemen as part of their depth, 4 offensive linemen are rookies on this team out of 10. 40% of their offensive line has never played an NFL game before. That's significant. That's very significant. Even though 3 of them ride the bench, there's a lot of room for error here. I'll say that. The top end, fantastic, but there is a huge margin for error. You get to the run blocking, they're 14th. Kingsley Suamatia is horrific at run blocking, as is Jawan Taylor. But again, you're carried by the interior offensive line in the run game. And Isaiah Pacheco, you open up a run lane for him in the A and the B gap. He's going to hit it hard like he's Derrick Henry. And he doesn't get hurt. He's as tough as nails. So you've got at least some advantage there. It's going to allow mostly Kingsley Suamatia to maybe develop that aspect of his game. I don't know that Jawan Taylor is at a stage in his career where this is going to get developed all that much to where he's going to be something where you go, yay, we got Jawan Taylor for this run play. I don't think that's ever going to happen. Creed Humphrey, one of the best, if not the best run blocking center in the league. Trey Smith, much better at run blocking than pass blocking. Joe Thuney does take a significant step back, like a full tier, maybe a tier and a half back, but he's such a great high-level top 5 pass blocking guard in the league. For him to be like the 16th best run blocking guard is fantastic. I think that's a fantastic place to be. A fantastic average out for him. And again, the depth is a huge issue. I give a lot of benefit of the doubt to Hunter Nurzad. Gets a 67 grade for me, but he's an interior lineman. And you're great on the interior. The tackles, Wanya Morris, terrible. Ethan Driscoll, terrible. They're like basically equally as bad as Jawan Taylor is. So you're not going to improve by taking Jawan Taylor out at any point. You're going to take a very, very minuscule step up in run blocking and tremendous step back in pass blocking. So you're just sort of hoping that you can hide your tackles and not pick up an injury here on the offensive line at all. I would watch significantly to this offensive line if they do pick up an injury. They just don't have the bodies right now with the experience. And there's only so many times you can pull a Trey Smith out of the hat. There's only so many times you can get Creed Humphrey up to speed as quickly as they did. For them to expect them to repeat that with a CJ Hansen or a Hunter Nurzad or an Ethan Driscoll, just not realistic. I think Kingsley Suamatia, the reason he gets to start is because he does have such a high ceiling, but his floor is also not great either. And I think that's something to watch early in his rookie year. If he potentially gets beat up a bit by guys like Max Crosby, by Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, particularly within their division, that's something I would watch. Overall, they are my 3rd ranked offense, number 2 pass offense, tied for 13th rush offense. Again, they're really just solid across the board here in most aspects of this game, third best offense. I mean, it's going to be hard to stop them. The only cause for concern, wide receiver room, the top end ability of that wide receiver room, and the mixture of abilities that they have. And then if they catch an injury on the offensive line, that's really it. Now let's go to the defensive side of the football, and this is where you're going to notice something about the overall skill level compared to what you get out of the coaching staff that really elevates everybody. George Karlaftis and Mike Dana are your starting defensive ends here. 24th edge rush room. Both of these guys I would say would be solid number twos. Don't love either one as a number one. Not yet. They do have a first round pick in there, Felix Anaduke Uzoma, who I think is going to get some opportunities, but they also did trade for Cameron Thomas from the Arizona Cardinals, who's going to step on a lot of his reps. You do have concern for that first round pick. They've thrown a first round pick into the fire already. Clyde Edwards-Helaire on the offense side of the ball. And they have so many great players on this team that these leashes aren't that long as they would be for other teams. So I think Zoma's really going to have to step up this year, really work his way onto the field, eat into the snaps of Mike Dana, and establish himself as what they were hoping that they would get, like a true 1-2 punch of first-round edge rushers with Karlaftis. They're the worst edge group against the run. Not a lot of depth. On any other situation, you would hope to get both these guys off the field in these scenarios. You're hoping that Karlaftis can improve on his game and that Karlaftis can continue to grow. He has done that since he's gone into the league. Year to year, he's taken incremental steps forward. You're waiting for that big leap forward. Maybe that comes this year. But it's tough to say at this point. Maybe he's just somebody who does grow incrementally and ends up settling in as like a high-end number 2 edge player, and you're constantly going to be searching for that number 1. I think that's a possibility as well. But this is just this group here. This is where the improvement needs to happen. You don't have the depth either. Uzoma was not good. Maybe this is where he really settles in, works on this aspect of his game to get on the field. Maybe that's what separates him now from the group. It'll be interesting to watch how he's developed in this aspect. Cameron Thomas, again, sort of the same thing. It's like never really settled in. Again, he never really had a legitimately carved out role in Arizona. He sort of was used as an interior guy. Then he was like a 3-4 end. Then he was an edge rusher. Constantly being moved around, not being able to settle into a particular role, I think has hurt him. Now he's coming to a more 4-3 defense, 4-3 base defense, where he's going to be solely a defensive end. That's his true role as a 4-3 defensive end, and I think that will open up opportunities for him to develop, and maybe he takes a tremendous step forward and eats into some of these guys' playing times. But right now, this rotation is going to be a real weakness for them. Quite the contrary for the interior. They're tied for third with interior rush. Chris Jones, my estimation, he's the number 2 interior defensive lineman in the league behind Dexter Lawrence now. But what a talent, particularly rushing the passer. You can put him anywhere on that defensive line, and he's going to get after that quarterback. He's a great athlete. He plays much faster than you would expect him to. And he's able to actually play bigger at times. He's one of those unique talents where he can play the speed game, he can play the power game, depending on what the situation calls for. You're looking at who his complement is, and his complement really doesn't have to be great. He just needs a healthy rotation next to him. In these passing situations, it's going to be likely Tershawn Morton, who I think, middle number 2 in this scenario. Then when you get to them against the run, they do drop to 16th. Chris Jones, not particularly great at this role. I'm not saying you question his motor, but he's not Dexter Lawrence in terms of consistency from situation to situation, I will say. You will see Chris Jones sort of get caught sometimes by a pulling guard. You'll see him, not being able necessarily to work well off of double teams and run situations. That is a quote unquote weakness of his game, some might say, but he's still a legitimate number one, even in running situations. Derek Nandy comes in on these early down situations. No one else really is worth the snap time in these scenarios. So that's where Nandy's really going to thrive. So I expect there to be a 3-man interior defensive line here with Mike Pennell sort of wallowing there in the background in case of an injury. But Chris Jones, Natty here on the early downs, and you'll see Chris Jones and Tershawn Wharton working in along with Dana and Karlaftis. But the drop-off here does have a coinciding with the drop-off here. It does drop them out of the top 20 for overall defensive line. Really, it's a defensive line driven by that man right there, Chris Jones, to the left. If he's having a great game, it's going to open up a lot of opportunities because you have to really focus on keeping your running back in between the tackles to account for Chris Jones beating it to help double team, triple team him in scenarios. It's going to open up a lot of one-on-one opportunities off the edge for their defensive ends, who, again, if they can start to step up, if they can take a step up to the next level, then that will raise this group up significantly. You just need to have a sign of doing it, and I think the hyper attack strategy of Steve Spagnuolo also helps out with maybe the lack of on the paper talent level, particularly this edge room, because there's going to be pressure coming from all over the place, and it's going to help everybody involved. And when you have a great interior player like Chris Jones, that also compounds and helps out guys who may not have like the high-end talent. It helps raise the floor of the overall defense and the pressure they're able to put on quarterbacks with that combination of scheme, play calling, and a truly elite level player. Now let's go over to the linebackers, and linebackers in coverage, they're my 30th ranked linebacker group in pass coverage. I don't love them in this scenario. I really don't. I think there's a lot of weaknesses here. I think Drew Tranquil, this is where you're going to get him on the field. And Nick Bolton, I love him against the run. Don't particularly love him in this scenario here. They are an example of Spagnuolo and the scheme and the play calling elevating them. Elevating them perhaps to levels, puts them in scenarios to succeed. It puts them in scenarios to cover up a lot of the deficiencies they have by putting other players in great positions based upon the play calling that sort of cover for that lack of ability they might have. Now I understand I might be kind of crapping all over Nick Bolton. Get to linebackers against the run, they're tied for 7th. You get Leo Chanel out there, Nick Bolton out there, Cam Jones can get out there as well. This is a really good group. This also helps out for the deficiencies they have in the front 4 against the run. So the overall front 7, front 6 that they have really complement each other well. And one makes up for the lack that the other has given the particular scenario, and that in turn makes everybody better, which is really at the end of the day what you want. They lost Willie Gay to free agency. He would have been somebody that would have slid into these scenarios. Leo Chanel was never going to be a guy you would use in passing downs. You hope Nick Bolton can continue to develop, but the problem is that, Nick Bolton has great plays. Nick Bolton overall throughout the entire season does play like a number 1 linebacker, but you'll see him blow coverages. You'll see him not necessarily play well in zone when that's his assignment. He doesn't particularly cover a tight end all that well. He has like these big splash play moments that look really great on an Instagram reel or a TikTok, but in the grand scheme of a game, there's a lot more plays where you're going like, God, where was Bolton there? Why did he make that decision? How did he not see that coming? Then you do like, oh my God, that was the greatest play of all time. Very hot and cold that way in pass coverage. Much more solid against the run. He's very, very sure. He's a very, very sure tackler against the run. Understands gap assignments really well in that aspect. So you get the good and the bad with him. He's got all this big play potential there's just like that pause for him. That second being the second level responsibility, and you hope that Drew Tranquil can maybe take that role over a lot more, and then maybe Nick Bolton can become much more of like a blitzing threat, part of that aspect than he is usually. Now moving on to the defensive backs, and this corner group is tied for 8th. And imagine that they lost one of their best players on the defense that played corner, and they're still tied for 8th. That's because Trent McDuffie, all pro, amazing, can play outside, can play inside, you can play him at some safety even. He can play everywhere on this defense. He's somebody that you have to identify as a quarterback. You have to identify Chris Jones, then you got to identify Trent McDuffie. He was fantastic. Joshua Williams and Jalen Watson are going to get a lot more playing time now with L'Jarius Sneed gone, but they were always great contributors. Now they're going to have a lot more responsibility, but they're so well ingrained into this defense. They have great chemistry with everyone involved here. Very young group as well. Not a lot of tread out there. Very athletic. Got some length to them. Not a lot of depth. Christian Wallace. Nazeeh Johnson's going to get some playing time in there just because I think Spagnuolo likes his traits more so than his talent level. You'll see him very high on the depth chart, on the official depth chart. I just don't see the high-end talent. I would prefer these 3 guys here to be the most featured out of everyone. Trent McDuffie taking a huge step up. That's the step up you're hoping to get from Karlaftis that you didn't get. That you're hoping that you can get this year to drastically improve that front 4. But this back end here does a lot of the heavy lifting that allows you to blitz so comfortably the way that Spagnuolo likes to do, and opens up the opportunities for those blitzes to get home because these guys play so well on the outside on these receivers and locking them up. Even the safety group, they are tied for 8th. Chamari Connor is another one that you'll see him drop down and play corner as well. You'll see him play in the slot. You'll see him even play some outside. He's a great piece to throw in there, and you'll see a world where Connor and Justin Reed and then Brian Cook will all be on the field at the same time with Trent McDuffie and then maybe like a Joshua Williams. But tied for 8th in safety coverage, I really like the flexibility they all have here. That Chamari Connor can play everywhere. He's almost like a poor man's version of Kyle Hamilton in Baltimore, where you can play him at pretty much every single defensive back position, and you can disguise him in certain areas where it's just impossible to predict where he's going to be. He had a really great performance last year, really high on him, and to take that next step forward, a Trent McDuffie level step forward coming up. You get to the defensive back run support. This is where his size really comes into play, but they do take a bit of a step back. They're tied for 18th in DB run support. Justin Reed, Brian Cook, you're going to need to see them. I would think on early down situations, you'll probably see Justin Reed and Brian Cook on the field as your safeties. And then that's where Chamari Connor is going to be playing maybe closer to the line as like your nickel, with Trent McDuffie and Joshua Williams playing on the outside. That could be a combination where you get those guys on the field in those scenarios. I think that will raise up the overall ability of the complete defensive back group in their run support by getting all those guys on the field, because then you take a more traditional cornerback off the field who's may not be not only that great at defending the run, but that enthused about defending the run either. And I think with the play that you've seen there, having this healthy rotation of the athletes in the back end, it can't be understated how much it helps the deficiencies of the front 4, particularly the edge room. And it's going to allow these guys here are directly correlated, I truly believe, to the development we're going to see of the defensive ends this season. And they are really the heart and soul of what this defense is. And it's why Steve Spagnuolo is able to run the scheme that he does and run it with the level of success. It's because of this group here. And it's a great group that's so young and that they're still going to get better. Can't talk about how young McDuffie, Williams, and Watson are. You'd think that they were these grizzled veterans. They're not. They're all on rookie deals. All 3 of them are on rookie deals. Chamari Connor, I think, is on a rookie deal. Brian Cook is on a rookie deal. The only defensive back I think that's going to get any significant playing time that's not on a rookie contract right now is Justin Reed. You'll have to fact check me on Shamari Connor. But that can't be understated. And that opens up the window of opportunity here so significantly. And you can't help but expect that edge room to get better and to play with a lot more confidence, a lot more, reckless abandon, because you got a true number 1 corner. You got a great number 2, and you got a really good complementary number 3 with some back end help. Just fantastic. Fantastic. Overall, it is the 18th ranked defense in terms of talent. Talent level, not how they're going to statistically perform, people. So don't get that confused. This is one of those times where I can't have my comment section confused. 16th pass defense, 12th run defense. Don't get confused. This is still going to be a top 10 defense statistically. So overall, it's my 3rd ranked team, tied for 4th in coaching, 3rd in offense, 18th defense. Don't get confused. Can't stress that enough. I don't want to see comments in the comment section about how can they be the 18th defense? They're so good. This is just on paper. This is just what they are on paper, and paper doesn't always tell the whole story, folks. And there you have it, my number 3 team, the Kansas City Chiefs. What a deep dive series that we did. We're so close to it being over. We're so close. It's almost done. It's almost done. You almost now don't have to look at my face as often as you have been. But you can, because I got the series here on either side of my head. The next video and then the playlist. It's been a wild ride. I hope you guys have enjoyed it, and I hope you guys continue to enjoy it and watch the rest of the videos and watch any of the videos you may have missed. And I will see you guys with the next video next time.